I used to believe that love in a family was supposed to be automatic, unconditional, unwavering, evenly spread like butter on warm toast. But in my house, love had a hierarchy. And at the very top sat my older brother, Brandon. Brandon was the sun around which the Collins household revolved. He didn't have to earn affection, he simply absorbed it. My mother called him her miracle baby, and my father, a quiet man with a shadow of a spine, always echoed her praise like gospel. He was handsome, charismatic in a cocky sort of way, and had a smile that made adults laugh and girls blush. But underneath all that charm was someone who couldn't hold down a job, barely passed high school, and spent most of his 20s bouncing between half-baked business ideas and his childhood bedroom. Meanwhile, Emma was the quiet one. I followed rules, did my homework, brought home honor roll certificates no one bothered to frame. I cooked dinner when Mom worked late, helped Brandon finish his college applications, and never asked for much. I didn't make waves. I was the background music in a house obsessed with the lead singer. Every family photo told the story clearly. Brandon in the center, arms slung around someone's shoulders. Me at the edge, half smiling, half forgotten. Whenever I accomplished something, Mom's response was always the same. "That's nice, sweetie, but your brother's working on something big right now." That something big usually turned out to be a failed YouTube channel, a drop-shipping scam, or a bartending job that lasted 3 weeks. Still, my parents insisted he was destined for more. "Boys carry the name," Dad once said. "You girls grow up and leave. But Brandon, he'll be the one to carry this family." I was 17 when I stopped trying to impress them, but the only person who ever truly really saw me, was Grandpa Arthur. He was my mother's father, a retired literature professor with a voice like soft thunder and a heart built of stitched-up silence. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it mattered. Every Saturday growing up, he'd take me to the little bookstore near his apartment. He never pushed me toward anything, just let me roam the shelves while he sat by the poetry section, sipping tea and watching. One day when I was 13, I asked him, "Do you think I'll ever do anything important?" He didn't hesitate. "You already are." That sentence changed me. It was the first time I felt like someone wasn't waiting for me to become impressive. They believed I already was. Even as he got older, Grandpa never stopped writing me letters. Birthday cards filled with poems, notes on yellowed paper slipped into books he thought I'd like. When I got into college on a full scholarship, he was the only one who cried. Not Mom, not Dad, not Brandon, just Grandpa. I didn't know it then, but he had been watching everything. Watching how I was treated, watching how hard I tried to be enough, watching how often I was left out, overlooked, edited out of my own family's story. And somewhere in his quiet, measured way, he was planning to do something about it. College was my escape plan. When I got the acceptance letter from a state university 3 hours away, with a full academic scholarship, I cried in the shower, not from joy but from relief. Not once did my parents ask what school I had chosen. When I told them I was leaving in August, Mom barely looked up from her phone. Make sure you leave the freezer stocked before you go," she said. Dad just muttered, "Don't forget to help Brandon with his resume this weekend." Brandon was 24 and still couldn't put together a basic resume. But sure, I'd help. I always helped. When I moved into my cramped dorm room with 2 bags and a secondhand laptop, no one from my family came with me. Grandpa had offered, but he was recovering from surgery that summer and couldn't travel. He called instead. "Do you feel free?" he asked, his voice gravelly but kind. I stared at the peeling paint on my dorm wall, at the empty bed across from mine, and whispered, "Not yet." College wasn't easy. Between classes, part-time jobs, and ramen dinners, I barely had time to sleep. But for the first time in my life, everything I did felt like it was for me. No one knew me as Brandon's little sister. No one expected me to dim myself down. Still, I sent money home when I could. Paid for part of the electricity bill one winter when Brandon had maxed out Mom's credit card. Brought groceries when I visited during break. Cooked Thanksgiving dinner by myself because Mom said she was too drained from dealing with Brandon's latest crisis. No one ever said thank you. But I kept doing it. Because that's what good daughters did, right? I kept telling myself that loyalty would eventually earn me love. That if I just stayed patient, stayed helpful, stayed small, maybe they'd see me. But they didn't. Not even once. After graduation, I got a job teaching high school English and rented a tiny studio apartment 10 minutes from campus. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Grandpa was the only one who came to my graduation. He wore a gray suit, carried a cane, and cried when he hugged me. "I'm proud of you, Em," he said. "You built yourself from scratch." We started meeting every other Sunday after that, always at the same diner on the corner of 5th and Main. He'd order black coffee, I'd get blueberry pancakes, and we'd talk about literature, politics, and life. Sometimes he'd go quiet mid-sentence, like his thoughts had wandered to a place I couldn't follow. "Are you okay?" I'd ask. He'd blink and smile. "Just thinking. I'm writing something for you, but you'll get it later." At the time, I assumed he meant a poem. I didn't know he meant everything. Meanwhile, Brandon spiraled. Another failed business venture. Another girlfriend left. More debt. He moved back in with my parents, again. They gave him Dad's old truck, cleaned out the basement for his home office, and said he just needs a little more time. He was 28. I was 26, and still sending money every now and then when the family account was low, and they still praised him louder than they ever spoke of me. But I kept showing up. I kept trying. Because despite everything, I loved them. Even when they made it hard. Even when they made it hurt. Then, in late spring, I missed a call from Grandpa. He never left voicemails, but that time he did. It was short. "Emma, sunshine, I just wanted to say I love you, and don't let them tell you what you deserve. You already know. Don't forget." My chest tightened the moment I heard it. I called him back immediately. No answer. By the next morning, he was gone. Heart failure, the doctor said. Peaceful. In his sleep. But nothing about it felt peaceful to me. The day of the funeral was overcast, like even the sky was too heavy to hold itself up. I showed up in a plain black dress, the same one I'd worn to my college graduation, because I knew Grandpa wouldn't care about how I looked, only that I was there. My parents stood near the front of the chapel, perfectly composed, like grief was a performance they'd rehearsed. Brandon arrived 10 minutes late, wearing designer sunglasses and chewing gum. He hugged Mom, fist-bumped Dad, and glanced at me like I was one of the flower arrangements. "Hey, Em," he muttered before turning his back and pulling out his phone. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell the whole room that the man we were burying had raised me more than any of them. That while they used him for birthday checks and Christmas money, I was the one who sat by his hospital bed and read him Yeats. But I stayed quiet. Because that's what I always did. During the service, the priest read generic scripture and Mom gave a short, stiff speech. Not a single story. Not a single real memory. Just the kind of thing you say when someone dies, and you're more concerned with how you look in black. No one asked if I wanted to speak. After the burial, the family gathered at my parents' house. Sandwiches were served. Stories floated around the room, most of them shallow and rehearsed. People clinked glasses and whispered about Grandpa's modest estate, wondering what would happen to his condo, his pension, his collection of rare books. Brandon said loudly, "I mean, obviously the house'll come to me. I'm the only one who can take care of it." Mom nodded in agreement. It's only right, he'd want it to stay in the family name. I just stared at my plate. No one asked what I thought. No one even acknowledged that I might care. Later that evening, while people were still lingering with plastic cups of wine, a tall man in a navy suit walked through the door. He looked too polished for the room, like someone who had spent more time in boardrooms than backyards. "Emma Collins?" he asked, eyes scanning the room. I stood up, startled. "That's me." He offered a thin smile. "My name is Mr. Harrington. I'm your grandfather's estate attorney. He requested I meet with you privately. Would you have a moment to come with me to my office?" My mother stood up quickly. "Wait, shouldn't we all be there for that?" Mr. Harrington raised a brow. "Actually, no. Mr. Mitchell left very clear instructions. This part concerns Miss Collins only." I could feel everyone watching me as I grabbed my coat and followed him out the door. It was the first time in my life anyone in that room had looked at me like I might be holding something they didn't, and I was. We drove in silence to a quiet office building on the edge of town. Mr. Harrington led me to a conference room with a folder already waiting at the center of the table. He sat, adjusted his glasses and slid the folder toward me. "Your grandfather left you everything," he said simply. I blinked. I'm sorry? The condo, his life insurance, his investments, and the entirety of his estate, including a separate account with $320,000 that he never disclosed to your family. My breath caught. He also left this, Mr. Harrington added, pulling out a yellowed envelope. A letter. For you. My hands shook as I opened it. Emma, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And I hate that I had to leave you behind in a house that never deserved you. But I want you to know, loud and clear, that I saw everything. I saw how hard you worked, how you stayed kind when no one returned it. I saw you carry a family that never lifted a finger for you. And I want you to have what they never gave. A life you don't have to apologize for. This is my way of tipping the scale back, of saying, you mattered, you still do. Go build a world where no one tells you what you're worth. Let them wonder why they never got a piece of it. I love you. Always have. Always will, Grandpa. By the time I finished reading, I was crying, not the loud, dramatic kind, just silent tears that ran down and hit the paper like raindrops on old stone. Mr. Harrington handed me a box of tissues. Take your time, he said gently. Your grandfather was very deliberate. He didn't want them to take a single piece of what you've earned. I nodded, holding the letter to my chest like a shield. For the first time in my life, someone had stood up for me. Even in death, Grandpa had found a way to lift me higher than they'd ever let me rise. I didn't go back to my parents' house that night. Instead, I checked into a quiet inn a few blocks from Mr. Harrington's office. The room smelled like lavender and wood polish. I placed Grandpa's letter on the nightstand and stared at it for a long time, rereading each line until the words were etched into my chest. He saw me, not just the version of me that smiled through family dinners and stayed out of the way. He saw the girl who learned to swallow bitterness and call it maturity. He saw the woman I was still trying to become. I didn't sleep much. The next morning, I met Mr. Harrington again. We signed papers, transferred titles, handled logistics. The process was quick, almost surgical. In less than 3 hours, I legally owned everything my grandfather had worked for his entire life, and my family didn't know yet. But they would. That evening, I received the first message. We need to talk. Come by the house tonight. Brandon has questions about Grandpa's will. I almost laughed. Not how are you, or is it true? Just, Brandon has questions. I waited 2 hours before replying. I'll be there at 8. When I walked into the house, it was like stepping into a courtroom. Mom stood with her arms crossed. Dad sat silently in the corner. Brandon paced, holding a beer in one hand, his phone in the other. About time, Brandon barked. You've got some nerve, Em? Going behind our backs, manipulating an old man? I blinked. Excuse me? You heard me, he spat. There's no way Grandpa left all that to you. It's not fair. He was old. He probably didn't know what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing, I said quietly, reaching into my bag and placing the letter on the table. He wrote this for me. Mom snatched it up and started reading, her lips tightening with every line. When she finished, she slammed it down. This doesn't change anything. It changes everything, I said. You're being selfish, she snapped. You think money can undo being a daughter? We took care of you. We fed you. Did you? I asked. Or did you just keep me around to clean up Brandon's messes? Don't talk to your mother like that, Dad muttered. I turned to him. Did you ever defend me? Once. He looked down at the floor. Brandon scoffed. Whatever. You don't even need that house. I was supposed to get it. No, I said, my voice steady now. You expected to get it, because you're so used to being handed things you didn't earn. He stepped toward me. You think you're better than us now? I didn't flinch. No, I think I'm finally done pretending we're the same. Mom folded her arms tighter. What are you going to do? Keep everything? Cut your family out? I'm going to live in Grandpa's condo, I said. I'm going to keep his books, his plants, his garden. I'm going to honor the only person in this family who ever believed in me. And us? She asked, her voice rising. I stared at her, at all of them. I gave you years of loyalty. You gave me silence. I think we're even. And with that, I turned and walked out. I expected the door to slam behind me. It didn't. Just a quiet click, like the end of a sentence no one wanted to finish. Moving into Grandpa's condo was like entering a sanctuary built just for me. Every corner held something he touched. a bookshelf labeled in his handwriting, a teacup with a crack he refused to throw out, the old typewriter where he'd banged out letters and poems long before I was born. On the second night, I found a journal tucked beneath the floorboards of his closet. A single sentence was written on the first page. For Emma. So you'll never forget who you are when no one else remembers. I didn't cry this time. I just closed the book, held it to my chest, and whispered, I remember now. Word spread quickly in our small town. People asked if the rumors were true, that I inherited everything, that my family had been blindsided. I didn't confirm or deny. I just smiled and said, Grandpa always made sure things ended exactly the way they were meant to. Brandon tried to contest the will. Mr. Harrington shut it down in 2 phone calls. Legally airtight. Witnessed, notarized, undisputed. They had no ground to stand on, only the echo of their entitlement. And me? I built a new life out of old walls. I kept teaching, adopted a cat, hosted a poetry night every other Friday in Grandpa's living room. The first poem I read aloud was one he wrote for me on my 15th birthday. They'll clip your wings and call it care, but you were born to soar, not share. I used to wonder if I was too quiet, too small, too easily forgotten, but now I know, I wasn't the problem. They were just never ready for someone who didn't need permission to rise. The official reading of the will happened 1 week later. Mr. Harrington invited everyone to his office, not because it was legally required, but because, as he put it, Mr. Mitchell wanted no misunderstandings. That was his polite way of saying your family is going to lose their minds, and I'd rather it happen under supervision. I arrived early. I wore the same dark green blouse Grandpa once said brought out the steel in my eyes. It felt like armor. Mom, Dad, and Brandon walked in together. Brandon looked irritated before he even sat down, like the leather chair had personally insulted him. Mom kept giving me sideways glances, tight-lipped and twitching with suppressed fury. Dad was quiet, as always, a man allergic to confrontation unless it served his comfort. Mr. Harrington opened the meeting with his usual calm professionalism. Thank you all for coming. As you may know, Arthur Mitchell executed a revised will 18 months prior to his passing, in accordance with state law. It was witnessed, notarized, and filed properly. There are no competing documents. Mom interrupted immediately. Cut to the point. We know what's in it. Brandon crossed his arms. Yeah, we all know Emma got everything. No need for the theatrics. Mr. Harrington didn't flinch. Out of respect, I'll read the essential clause verbatim. He adjusted his glasses and read from the document. I, Arthur James Mitchell, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath the entirety of my estate, movable and immovable assets, savings, personal property, and residual accounts, to my granddaughter, Emma Grace Collins. I make this decision not out of impulse, but with full awareness and intention. She has been the true heart of this family, though rarely treated as such. Let this stand as my final correction of a wrong left unspoken too long. Silence. Then Mom stood up so abruptly her chair scraped the floor. This is outrageous, she hissed. He was manipulated. He was old. He didn't know what he was signing. Mr. Harrington closed the folder gently. Your father passed all medical competency assessments at the time. There is video, as well as handwriting analysis, and multiple independent witnesses. Any attempt to challenge this will likely result in penalties and court fees. Dad cleared his throat but said nothing. Brandon, red in the face, slammed his fist on the table. She didn't earn any of this. I'm his grandson. I was supposed to carry on his name. I looked him straight in the eye. You couldn't even carry your own resume. His mouth opened. No words came out. Mom rounded on me. You think you're so special now, don't you, sitting there like some queen while your family suffers? No, I said softly. I think I'm finally sitting where Grandpa meant me to. You all just never imagined it wasn't beside you, it was above you. She turned purple. I raised you. You tolerated me, I said. Let's not rewrite history. Dad stood, finally finding his voice. You're making a mistake, Emma. You'll regret cutting off your family like this. I stood too. I didn't cut anyone off. I just stopped bleeding for people who never once tried to bandage the wounds they caused. No one spoke after that. Mr. Harrington closed his leather binder and walked them to the door. As they left, Brandon muttered, "This isn't over." But it was, and they all knew it. It's been 6 months since the reading. The keys to Grandpa's condo now hang on a brass hook by the front door, right below a hand-painted tile that reads, "This home has known real love." He bought that tile at a local craft fair when I was 9, and I remember asking him why he didn't hang it in his own kitchen. "Because I'm saving it for someone who'll understand it," he had said. Now I do. Every morning, I open the curtains and let the light flood into the space he once called home. The bookshelf in the living room is still exactly as he left it, except for one new addition: the journal I found hidden in his closet, filled with handwritten notes and reflections from a man who had spent most of his life listening. And now, finally, he was being heard. I filled the condo with quiet things: plants, old records, the scent of cedarwood oil drifting from a diffuser. Peace doesn't make a sound, I've learned. It just lingers, like memory. No one from my family has spoken to me since the will. Not one call, not a birthday message, not even a passive-aggressive email. At first I thought it would ache, like something torn away, but the absence felt more like a fever breaking, a release. I had spent years trying to earn my place in a home that saw me as optional. Years folding myself smaller, quieter, more obedient, hoping someone might say thank you. But now I don't need their gratitude, because I have something better. I have self-respect. I have the home of the one person who looked at me, not around me, and said, "You matter." The deed is in my name. So is the electric bill, the water, the mortgage, which he paid off in full, quietly, 5 years ago. All of it, mine. Legally, emotionally, spiritually. Brandon tried once more through a lawyer, a pitiful attempt to negotiate terms for shared property. Mr. Harrington shut it down in less than a week. Since then, silence. But silence doesn't hurt anymore. Some nights, I sit on the patio and sip tea out of Grandpa's old chipped mug, the same one he used every Sunday morning, back when I was just a girl curled in the corner of his couch, reciting poems I thought he'd like. And I think to myself, I am not angry. I am not bitter. I am not broken. I am exactly who he knew I could be, if given even 1 inch of room to grow. He gave me a mile, and I'm running with it every day. The other night, I wrote a letter of my own. Not because I needed closure, but because I wanted to seal this chapter with truth. I didn't address it to anyone. I just wrote, "I didn't win anything. I just stopped losing. I didn't take from you. I finally accepted what was mine. I hope one day you understand the difference." Then I folded the paper, slid it into an envelope, and tucked it behind Grandpa's old photo on the mantel, right next to that little hand-painted tile, and that's where it will stay. Not as proof. Not as vengeance. But as peace. Mine, at last.